Should we be terrified about small town justice? I would argue perhaps so. When a sheriff's deputy in Letcher County, Kentucky can be convicted or plead guilty to 4 felonies, 1 sodomy, 1 rape, 2 felonies involving tampering of home monitoring devices. 4 felonies you can plead guilty to last year in January, and you're already out. You are out of jail by summer and back on the street to live a normal life after 4 felonies. Small town justice looks a little different than other places. Let's talk a little bit about the differences between small town justice and big town justice, and the differences between criminal court proceedings and civil court proceedings, and how it should scare the living bejesus out of everyone. The devil's in the details. Let's go. Now, as you may know, one of the cases I follow at the Devil's Advocates is the story of Mickey Stein, the former sheriff now who shot and killed Judge Kevin Mullins in the judge's chambers in cold blood on camera where everyone can see it. And that trial seems pretty straightforward, right? Everything we know just happened right there on camera. There's no question who the guy shot the judge. Having said that, as you delve into what happened, what led up to that, where Mickey Stein, as the sheriff, was testifying, he was deposed. He was deposed in the civil trial coming up on his deputy, Ben Fields. What does all that mean? What is the difference between a criminal trial and a civil trial? What was Mickey Stein's deposed for? And why did that lead to the shooting of a judge in the judge's chambers? Are you ready to hear all of my breakdown on these difficult topics? Now, one thing I want to say is that before you get too far is like, subscribe, and follow this channel right now. Before you get too far, you need to do it right now. A lot of people miss that. They get interested in a case and then they forget to have hit subscribe and they miss a whole bunch of shit. Don't be that person. If you're interested in Mickey Stein's case, or if you're interested in Delphi, if you're interested in, by the way, the Delphi has an appeal that's happening now. So Richard Allen's case is being kind of reinvestigated, if you will, or re-looked into by the appellate courts. Long Island serial killer Rex Heuermann, Luigi Mangione, the alleged shooter of Brian Thompson in New York, or Brian Koberger's case in Moscow, Idaho. Even though he pled guilty, that story isn't over. So if you follow any of those stories, make sure you're following my channel in general. And if you're following just the Mickey Stein's case, make sure you subscribe to this playlist. You can do the channel or the playlist. All right, let's get back to the details on this case. It should bother us in America, in my opinion, that a person can be convicted of 4 felonies and spend 6 months in jail maximum. Now, Ben Fields had a criminal investigation, a criminal trial pending for allegations of sodomizing women in the judge's chambers. That same judge that was shot and killed, the deputy sheriff, Ben Fields, was going to be on trial for sodomizing a woman in the judge's chambers, rape of a woman in the judge's chambers, and tampering with her home monitoring device, her ankle monitor, in the pursuit of coercing her and forcing her to have sex with him under these conditions, using basically, hey, you're off your ankle monitor, I'll have you arrested. But if you do the right thing, you make me happy, you can stay on home arrest without your ankle monitor on. Those kind of things were coming out. Here's the thing. As many trials in our country happen, criminal cases plead out. There's a plea deal in which a lot of the stuff stays very, very hidden. The details stay hidden. When you make a plea deal, it never goes to trial. You never see the details, and it stays buried. And then a minimal sentence happens. For example, in the case of Ben Stein, even though he pled guilty to sodomy, rape, and multiple counts of federal tampering with the home monitoring devices, the details of that case remain sealed or out of the public eye because it never went to trial. And the 7 years that he pled guilty to charges that gave him 7 years. They reduced that in small town community service to 6 months of actual incarceration and 6.5 years essentially of supervised, hey, knock it off, don't do that shit again kind of thing. Now, this happens more systemically in small town communities. And the scary part is that if you're a true crime investigator and say you want to go to Letcher County, Kentucky and see just what the fuck's going on in that county. Oh, by the way, every time I drop an F-bomb, I put on the parental discretion is advised. Yeah, so this is not a children's channel. This is a lot of foul language, and when I get really angry and spun up, I drop a lot of F-bombs. By the way, my jacket has some green on it, and it's a green screen behind me. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Anyways, that's a side tangent. The point being, is that we should be worried about what's going on. If I'm a true crime investigator and I want to go to Letcher County to find out what's going on, should I be terrified about being pulled over on a rural county road in a small town of a county of 21,000 people? It's a very, very small. Letcher County is 21,000 population, very, very small. Should I be terrified of going there and getting pulled over on a county road somewhere where, when law enforcement might do something wrong, they get maybe 6 months in jail and are back out on the streets again? Should we be concerned about that? But I want to talk about the differences between why this happens, the systemic issues. And then let's pay attention to what happened after this. Now, there was a criminal trial. And as I said, as often is the case, Ben Fields pled guilty to charges of sodomy, rape, and tampering of evidence. There were more charges. There were more felonies. If you had stacked all the felonies up that Ben Fields was potentially facing, he could have spent a lot more time in jail. But as typical is in this country, you make a plea deal, you take the lesser of all of the things you can, and you basically say, okay, I committed some felonies, bad on me, I'll register as a sex offender, I'll take my 7 years punishment, but I'll be out by summer because I'm only going to do 6 months in jail, because and the details of all that lay outside of public scrutiny because there was no trial. This kind of same shit happened in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, where Koberger pled guilty to charges, and the public was robbed after 3 years of having questions about a fucking case that stinks to high heaven. The public is robbed of seeing what really happened in that case and getting details because he pled guilty, and therefore everything remains sealed, out of the public scrutiny, and nobody gets to know exactly what law enforcement, prosecution, anybody did in that case, all basically buried under the protection of, well, he pled and there's no trial, so we don't have to talk about it. That is a systemic problem in our country. So Ben Fields was facing a criminal trial and sentenced to 7 years, if you will. But again, 6 months is all he spent in hard time. God damn it. Anyways, 6 months is what he spent incarcerated. He's back on the streets. If I go out there to investigate this case, I may have to run into Ben Fields on the streets. Ben Fields, hope you're having a nice day. Don't treat me badly if I'm there in town. But again, free to roam, right? Free to roam. And here's the thing that's scary. The civil case against Ben Fields is proceeding, and that starts, I think, in March of 2026. But that should terrify you. Why? Because what people don't seem to understand in this country is oftentimes the real details come out in the civil cases. The civil cases so the criminal case basically says, did you or didn't you break the law? Period. It's not about making the victim whole per se, right? It's just, did this happen? Yes or no? What's the penalty for doing that? I'm going to plead down and take a lesser sentence. Maybe I'm friends in a small town community, in small town justice. If you know the judge personally, and you know the prosecutor personally, and you know the defense attorney personally, and you go coffee with them because it's a small town, everybody fucking knows everybody in these towns. If you know everybody, you can get the lesser end of all of those punishments. You'd be like, you know what? I know you, dude. Don't worry about that. We'll give you the short end of that scale. You'll be on probation. You'll be back out in 6 months and living a normal life. Don't worry about it. We got you. That's the kind of allegation that could happen in small town communities across the country, small town justice. Again, as opposed to big cities where there's so much separation between multiple prosecutors and multiple attorneys and multiple judges and multiple separations of the jurisdiction. Oftentimes in small communities, the judge and the sheriff's department, like the sheriff's department in Letcher County, also serves as security for the courthouse and so forth. That kind of stuff doesn't necessarily happen in big cities, but it does in small town communities. So everybody's involved in everybody else's business, and you have a lot of problems for one bad seed could potentially ruin the whole barrel. All right, so let's talk about the civil case and what happened in the civil case of Ben Stein's and why you should be terrified about things like this. Now, this is an example, and I want to make sure that I'm clear. I'm not making allegations. I'm not saying this happened. What I'm asking is, do you see how this could be happening? And if it is, why you should be scared shitless for it. All right, so Ben Fields gets a minimal 6 months, and he's back out, and I hope he's having okay, I don't hope if he is or he isn't having it. I guess for my own safety, I'm like, don't piss off the bear who's actually out there free to roam the streets. If I go to investigate this case, that should scare me, I think, although ChatGPT will tell you, no, you have nothing to be afraid of. You shouldn't worry about that and don't even talk about it because that would be dangerous. Fuck. Anyways, it's the civil case that should scare the piss out of you. Why? Because in the civil case, this is where So the burden of proof, let me explain this. The burden of proof in a criminal case is guilt beyond reasonable doubt. You must prove somebody did a crime beyond reasonable doubt. That's the standard of proof typically in a criminal case, beyond reasonable doubt. In a civil case, it's the preponderance of evidence. It's a much different standard, a much lower standard. So a person can be found not guilty or not guilty of a whole hell of a lot at the criminal end and get a whole lot more punishment in the civil end. Also, even when a person has pled guilty, the civil penalty phase is usually where the real details come out. Because again, now that for example, in this case, now that Ben Stein has been pled guilty to sodomy, rape, and counts of tampering with those home monitoring devices, that's now an established fact. That makes it easier for the civil case now to go forward to say, look, he already admitted he did these things. Now let's talk about the details and the systemic problems that led to it and assign financial penalties and penalties to fix the systemic problem. That's where the civil case has real teeth, because one, it's only the preponderance of evidence. It's not the beyond reasonable doubt level that was required for the criminal case. It's preponderance of evidence, and a lot more detail comes out. Things get unsealed, stuff gets told to the public, details and emails, personal emails, all kinds of shit comes out in the civil case. And that's where a lot of people are terrified. It's not the criminal case where everybody just basically looks away and says, look, if we never go to trial and we plead on this, nobody will know what's going on. So don't worry about it. We'll just plead this shit out and we'll make it a slap on the wrist and you'll be out in 6 months. That's what happens at the criminal level, especially in small town justice, in my opinion. But the civil case can open up a a lot. Sorry, my language is bad. Again, it opens up a huge amount of details. Here's the problem. Once we moved to the civil stage of this trial against Ben Fields, once we moved into the civil territory, and now we were facing things coming out into the light of day, real actual emails, text messages, communications between the judge and the deputy and the sheriff. And all. Now that happened, people are literally dying in this case. They are literally dying in this case. Now, let me be careful. ChatGPT warned me. Oh my God, devil's advocates, whatever you do, do not imply people are being killed. Okay. I'm not going to imply people are being killed. Let me tell you what's happening. 2 women filed a civil lawsuit against Ben Fields, and one of them just died. They won't tell you why. They will not tell you why. She just died. Period. End of story. She died. I've looked everywhere, and the media doesn't report on it. She just died. Fucking just died. Coroner report won't tell you. She just died. That's it. So, as ChatGPT says, absolutely, you have no evidence whatsoever that there was anything suspicious about that death, and you should shut up. Be very, very careful. You should shut up. There's nothing suspicious about a death because nothing has been said about it. End of story. Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to go against the advice of ChatGPT and say, while I don't say that Jennifer Hill was murdered, I do find it suspicious that a 44-year-old just dies. And there are rumors out there on the internet about how Jennifer Hill died. There is no evidence, no proof, because everyone is hiding how she died. It's just, hey, by the way, she was suing Ben Fields civilly, which is where all the details come out, which is why they can't hide behind all of the gag orders and all the shit that typically happens. They can't hide everything because this is where all the details come out into the public eye is during the civil case. And so while doing the civil case against Ben Fields, she just dies. Now, I'm not saying foul play here. Things do happen. People do have accidents. People do. I'm not even going to go through all the rumors. The point being is that things do happen. It is true. And that's what we fall back on this country is, hey, shit happens. Shit happens. It would be a shame if you had an accident. It'd be a shame if you as a junkie just happened to overdose. It'll be a shame. So again, that doesn't mean anything like that happened. But again, keep in mind, the civil case going forward against Ben Fields. See, I got Mickey Steins and Ben Fields conflated. Why? Because the 2 cases are conflated. And here's how it was. And let's make sure you're clear on it one more time. Mickey Steins, who shot the judge in the judge's chamber, had been deposed in Ben Fields' upcoming civil case, where Jennifer Hill and Sabrina Atkins, I believe is the other plaintiff, was suing Ben Fields and by extension, the entire Letcher County Sheriff's Department for basically everything that happened there, trying to make them whole, the victims whole, by saying, look, you did these things to us. You already got criminal offenses against you. You pled guilty to sodomy and rape and tampering and stuff like that, but we're not whole. We have emotional damage, and we have concerns that there is a systemic problem in your system, that your judicial system is corrupt, that your law enforcement is corrupt, that you're allowing this abuse to happen, and slapping someone on the wrist for 6 months and saying, hey, you're back out in 6 months and now you can just register as a sex offender. That's just not good enough for the lives that have been ruined, for the people who are devastated, for the people who are terrified to drive their car in this county because they might get pulled over in a rural back road somewhere and have to fear for their life about opening their mouth when they shouldn't have opened their mouth. And so, as the civil case went forward, and they're going to try to make the sheriff's department be held accountable for all of the corruption that possibly is happening that allowed that kind of abuse to happen, where a deputy can coerce women into sex by using their ankle monitor and throwing them in jail when they don't play ball and all that shit. Now that we're going to make that whole, one, a woman just dies who was filing the lawsuit against him. She just dies. And then the judge, who was deposed in the case and allegedly by his attorney, Mickey Stein's attorney, has said, look, Mickey Stein's was told that he should keep his mouth shut and not testify in this case. But he did. He came out and he testified. He was deposed and said, yeah, I'll talk about what training I gave my deputy, and it's going to come out. In the civil trial, it'll come out. How much did the sheriff's department know about what his deputies were doing at the courthouse, providing security at the courthouse, providing monitoring of individuals on home arrest? How much did the sheriff's department really know? That's going to come out in the civil trial. And so when Mickey Steins was deposed, meaning they're asking for some preliminary questions. Hey, we're going to put you on the stand when the trial starts, but we're going to depose you. We're going to make you talk about some things to kind of set the stage. He was warned, allegedly, by his own attorney in the murder trial now of the judge. He was warned, and he was warned to keep his mouth shut, and allegedly was paid money to harm himself or his own family will be possibly killed. That allegedly set Mickey Steins off on a paranoid streak. He became paranoid because they're saying you better hurt yourself, i.e. kill yourself or something like that. Who knows what they were alleging with, you better hurt yourself or your family will get killed kind of thing. Now, there's no proof that happened, but again, small town justice, that kind of shit's never going to come out in the open. So supposedly, the rumor is, I have no proof that any of this is true. It's just, this is food for thought, questions to ask yourself, should you be terrified in a small community, small town justice? There was rumors that he was threatened that harm yourself, shut the F up. Literally, that was in the transcripts. Literally, you will shut the fuck up about these things. Multiple people in this case were told to shut their fucking mouth and stay out of sheriff department's business. But unfortunately, the sheriff did get deposed against his own deputy, and then he was threatened, allegedly, and then he went and shot the judge in the judge's chambers. That's not allegedly, that's on camera. You know he did. And now Mickey Steins is claiming a temporary insanity or an extreme emotional distress. Extreme emotional distress, or the EED defense, as we've seen in other cases, such as potentially upcoming Luigi Mangione case. That's a whole nother ball of wax. We'll deal with that more later if they actually file an extreme emotional defense case. But in this case, what it's basically saying is, look, yes, the sheriff, did shoot the judge, or his defense will say, yes, Mickey Steins, our client, did shoot the judge. That can't be disputed. However, you need to understand he was under extreme emotional defense. Maybe it's kind of tantamount to self-defense. If he thought that his life or his family's life was in danger, and he felt that killing the judge was the only way to save his family or himself, that would be one way to argue it. If he lost his mind because he was being threatened and his family was being threatened, and he temporarily lost his normal faculties because of how fearful he was for his wife and his daughter's safety and his own safety, and shot somebody, that also needs to be considered by a jury in this case. Because again, this state has the EED defense, which is, yeah, I did it, but you have to understand why I did it, which can mitigate murder down to a manslaughter charge. It can change murder into a manslaughter charge. And I know a lot of you in America really, really don't like that. You think a murderer is a murderer. He shot that judge in cold blood. Fuck that guy. That's a murderer. We'll put that aside for just a minute. In this country, we're not going to put it aside. I'm going to address it for a minute. In this country, for example, if you kill somebody because they were trying to kill you, we call that self-defense. It's not murder. If you kill someone because they're trying to kill your loved one right in front of your face and you stop them from killing your loved one, that also is considered self-defense in many states. So one can argue any kind of situation like that in which Mickey Steins may have been afraid for his own life or the life of his family could have led him to be a little bit excused for killing somebody in self-defense, essentially. Although the nuances of that we'll put aside for now. I will really put it aside for now. The point being that I want to make is this. In small town justice, there's a fear that everybody knows everybody. And everybody keeps things hush hush. And people go around telling people literally as they get pulled over, you better shut your mouth about these things. You're going to find yourself getting hurt. Everyone knows everyone. The sheriff knows the judge knows the prosecutor knows the defense attorney. Everybody knows everybody. And it's kind of what you could call the good old boys club. Everybody knows everybody. So you don't want to piss people off in this county. So I just wanted to highlight some of those details today in the Mickey Steins case to keep you aware that as we move forward to the civil trial of Ben Fields, and again, from my understanding, Ben Fields started to serve his time for 4 felonies in early January or mid-January of 2024, and he's long out, right? He's long out. And so now he's been free. He was free very, very quickly. And now we're waiting for that civil penalty where all the details tend to start coming out. And again, already people are dying. Again, that did not say, let me make sure for the last point you hear this. I did not say people are being murdered, although in the case of Judge Mullins, somebody was murdered, right? Mickey Steins literally did murder the judge. So maybe I can say people are being murdered in this case. I can say that. People are literally being murdered in relation to this case. Now, what happened to Jennifer Hill? That's a mystery because nobody in mainstream media or anyone with any fucking balls will tell us what happened. She just died. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Be a little bit afraid of small town justice.